Good morning, grade 6 pupils. Here is another lesson for Unit 5. What sports do you do? We are now in day 5, 22nd of October 2020, Thursday. Our lesson focus is lesson 2, present perfect continuous. Our references are the pupil's book on page 29 and the workbook on pages 28 and 32. This is your teacher, Miss Annalisa. And here are the objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students should be able to 1. Recall the uses of present perfect continuous tense. 2. Demonstrate by using a graphic organizer how present perfect continuous is formed. 3. Answer questions using the correct present perfect continuous form of verb. Let us start by revising our language focus. Let us read the sentence. I have been teaching since 1997. I have been teaching for 23 years. Yesterday, we talked about the present perfect continuous form. Can you identify the present perfect continuous form of the verb in these sentences? All right. Is this your answer? Have been teaching. Okay, good. What about in the second sentence? I have been teaching. Have been teaching also is the present perfect continuous. Very good. Now, look at these words. The first sentence uses since, and the second sentence uses for. Now, if we analyze the sentence, I have been teaching since 1997, how did we use since? Okay, did you say since talks about a point in time, like how it started, when it started? Good job. What about for? In here, I have been teaching for 23 years. So, do you remember the lesson we had yesterday? Yeah, it's a period of time. So, it's how long have you been teaching? So, you have there for 23 years. So, you talk about a period of time, while since talks about a certain point in time of the action. So like how it started. So now we revised our present perfect continuous form of the verb with the use of since and for. Let us now try to look back at the uses of the present perfect continuous. Present perfect continuous is used to mean a duration from the past until now, like in the sentences, he has been teaching for 10 years. So there is a time or the number of years where the person has been teaching. And on the second sentence, they have been living in Cairo for 23 years. So again, it talks about a duration from the past until now. Let's move on to the second. Actions that recently stopped. For example, I've been working all day. I'm tired, so I am going to take a nap. So the action have been working recently stopped because the person would be sleeping or taking nap. In the second sentence, it has been raining. The sidewalk is wet. So in this sentence, it tells us that the rain has stopped or has just stopped. Therefore, the raining continuously happening, and so the effect would that be the sidewalk is wet. It has been raining, the sidewalk is wet. So an action that recently stopped. Next, actions happening recently or lately. She has been exercising a lot recently. Has been exercising is the action that is happening recently, of course, with the help of the adverb recently. I haven't been studying English lately. Haven't been studying is the perfect continuous, and recently with the use of the adverb lately. Lastly, temporary actions. For example, they have been visiting their grandmother for the past week. So, the temporary action there is they've been visiting with the use of the past week. And the last one, I've been feeling for my boss for the past 2 days. I've been filling in for my boss for the past 2 days. So you have there a temporary action. I've been filling in for my boss. So you have there the past 2 days. So these are the uses or the functions of the present perfect continuous tense. Let us now proceed to revising the present perfect continuous form. So how do we form it again? Do you still remember? All right, this is to remind you of it. To form the present perfect continuous form of the verb, first we have our subject. Subject must be singular or plural, plus the auxiliary verb has if the subject is singular and have if the subject is plural, except for the subjects I and you. Plus been plus verb in its ing form. Let us take a look at the following. With the subjects I and you, as I mentioned, it uses have as an auxiliary verb, plus been plus ing form of the verb such as sleeping, eating, walking, jumping, and working. If our subjects are he, she, or it, or singular subjects per se, we use has as our auxiliary verb, followed again by been and the verb in its ing form. And lastly, we have the subjects we or they or plural subjects has to be followed by have as the auxiliary verb. Again, after that, it should be followed with been plus the past participle form of the verb. So, were you able to be reminded? Very good. Please make sure you keep this in mind. Now, let us try to make our statements into questions using the present perfect continuous form of the verb. So how should we do it? A while ago, we revised the form of the present perfect tense in a statement form, beginning with the subject, followed by the auxiliary verb, followed by been, followed by the verb in its ing form. Now, let us try to find it out with questions. First, we begin not with the subject, but we begin with the auxiliary verb have for plural subjects, except for I and you, and has. Plus or and should be followed by the subject. Could be I, you, he, she, it, they, or we. After that, it is followed by, again, been. After been, you have there the verb in its ing form. Don't forget the question mark. Okay, so this is now how we form our present perfect continuous in question form. Like for example, has as our auxiliary verb, Sarah as our subject. Since Sarah is singular, we use the auxiliary verb has. Has Sarah been reading? Let's try another one. This time our subject is you, so therefore we have to use have as auxiliary verb. So the sentence becomes, have you been singing? Again, don't forget the question mark since this is a question. And lastly, has it been raining? It is our subject, so it must be used with the singular auxiliary verb has, followed by been, followed by the verb in its ing form, and question mark. Has it been raining? So, this is now how present perfect continuous in question form is constructed. After revising and discussing how to make questions using the present perfect continuous, we now go to some exercises. Kindly open your workbook on page 28 and proceed to activity 3. In this activity, it asks about you. Answer the following questions. In order to answer these questions, you have to think of your present simple and your present perfect continuous. Let us do the first two numbers. What sports do you do? In this question, you are asked, what sports do you do? So, it means that you have to use the simple present form of the verb. So we could say, I play volleyball. So this is in the simple present. So the verb requires simple verb like play with the subject I. What about number 2? How long have you been doing it? Or how long have you been doing them? If you have more than one sport, let's now proceed. So how long? So we could say this time we use the present perfect continuous because the question there is how long have you been doing? So this is in the continuous form. So we also answer it in the continuous form. Like, I have been playing for 2 years. So you could say that or say, I have been playing volleyball for 2 years. What about number 3? What languages do you know? I know for a fact that you are studying French and English in this school as well. Together, of course, with your first language, which is Arabic. So we could say, I know Arabic, French, and English. Question number 4, it will be again present perfect continuous. How long have you been learning it, or how long have you been learning them? So you can say, I have been learning them since I was in grade 4. This is just an example, okay? You may have your own answers and you may have your own ideas and facts about it. What about the fourth one, or the fifth one rather? Where do you live? So again, this is another example of a verb in the simple present. So we need to answer it also with the simple present. Are we ready? So where do you live? We could say, I live in Doha, Qatar, to make it general. But if you want to write the street or the address you have, or the area where you live, you could put it like, I live in Medina Khalifa, North, like that. Okay, so how long have you been living there? So you could say, since this is in the continuous form, we say, I have been living there for 5 years now. Okay, did you get it correctly? So in this activity, just remember, if the question asks you for a simple present, then answer in a simple present form of the verb. If the question is in the continuous form, then answer in the continuous form. Okay, let's move on to our next activity. Okay, grade 6 students, we are now in the last two activities from our workbook on page 32. We are in activity 6. This is making sentences using the present perfect continuous. So you have learned how to form it, and you have learned how to answer questions using the present perfect continuous. Now we have our activity to make sentences using the data given to us. So let us try the first one. Alex collect stamps 2 years. So remember how to use the present perfect continuous. You have the subject, and then you must have what? An auxiliary form of the verb, which is either has or have, followed by the verb in its ing form. Oh, but before that, you make sure that you have been before the verb in its ing form of the verb. So again, subject, auxiliary verb has or have, followed by been, followed by verb in its ing form of the verb. Okay, so let's try the first one. Alex is the subject, collect is the verb. So we say, Alex has been collecting stamps for 2 years. Next, Bill and Ben swim 2 o'clock. So we say this is a plural subject, therefore it requires a plural auxiliary verb. So we have Bill and Ben have been swimming since 2 o'clock. Do you have the same idea? Good, if so. Then let's move on to the third one rather. We have you wait a long time. So we say you wait a long time. So you as our subject and wait as our verb. So we say you have been waiting for a long time. Number 4, Mr. Gordon dig garden hours. So Mr. Gordon has been digging the garden for hours. Was it easy? Of course, it is easy, as long as you remember or keep in your mind the forms of the present perfect continuous, not only the statement form, but the question form as well. So in activity 7, speaking of questions, we have to answer the following questions by writing full sentences. Okay, so how long have you been studying English? That's number one. So look at the verb. Have you been studying? So therefore, it requires the present perfect continuous form of the verb. Very good. So let's try our answers. Let's try answering. All right, we could say, I have been studying English since 2013. Good. What about the second one? How long have you been sitting in this classroom? How long do you stay in this classroom? Okay, so we say maybe I have been sitting here for 4 hours. And the last one, how long has your friend been living in this town? So we say, my friend has been living in this town since 2009. All right, grade 6 students, this has been the conclusion of our lesson about present perfect continuous. I hope that you can use them in constructing your sentences when you need them, and you can use them already properly and correctly. So, I would like to thank you for keeping up with me. I hope that you understand everything about this lesson. Always stay safe and stay healthy. This has been your teacher, Miss Annalisa, saying goodbye for now, grade 6 pupils, and see you next week.